Soul for a Soul by John Hope. Narrated by John Moe. Chapter 2. Augustine's Commission. A rush of air and light flooded the bishop's office as Augustine approached. He eyed the aged clergyman bent over an ornate table in the corner of the tight room, examining a scrolled copy of one of Apostle Paul's letters. "Bishop Loffredo?" Augustine ventured. The bishop raised his head from his intense study. "Ah, Brother Augustine." The bishop smiled and approached the younger man, embracing him in a warm hug. "Please close the door and sit." He motioned toward a pair of curule seats across the room. Backless, with curved legs forming a wide X and rising into low armrests, the cushioned chairs were aged relics of the Roman Empire. Augustine closed the door and joined Loffredo, their seats so close the two men's knees nearly touched. His posture and eyes alert, Augustine anxiously awaited what was sure to be a special request from his superior, for it wasn't often that he or anyone was summoned to the bishop's chambers. The drab, crowded room seemed like it should have been larger, considering the history of St. Thecla's Cathedral. Located in the heart of the ancient city of Mediolanum, the building had once been a Roman basilica used for public functions. A little over 30 years ago, in the mid-4th century, the Milanese had converted it into a cathedral. The bishop's quaint office used to be a governor's quarters. While the structure now occupied a grand position of leadership, it had been built for function, not extravagance. Even newly refurbished, the well-maintained space felt cold and uninviting. Loffredo started. "Thank you for coming so quickly. I understand I pulled you away from other commitments." "Well, yes." Augustine shifted in his chair, bearing a worried frown. "My son and I were about to leave for Hippo Regius." Located on the North African coastline in present-day Algeria, the growing maritime city had seen a sudden baby boom. Young families now yearned for a dynamic Christian church in which to raise their children, steering them away from the godless sailors who frequented the ports. As such, the remote community had begged for Augustine to come guide them in the building of a new worship site that would appeal to these families and expand the church's influence. "Yes, I know." Loffredo folded his hands. A small man, his weathered olive skin showed his ears, although his bright eyes held a youthful sharpness. "But I must ask you to delay your travels." "Why?" Augustine paused. Begging your pardon, of course, Bishop Loffredo." "We have a messy situation that needs to be cleaned up." "You mean the boy?" Loffredo nodded. "Such news spreads quickly. We can't have Brother Fides Albarello's sins destroy the reputation the church has worked so hard to build in Milan, especially not now, with Manichaeism biting for a rebound in Milan." Augustine nodded, fully cognizant of the religion's rise in popularity throughout Italy. Having originated in modern-day Iran, Manichaeism attempted to fill in the holes in other religions, including Christianity. Its theories expanded Jesus Christ's teachings and the writings of Enoch, whose writings had been rejected by Christian scholars. This rejection had fascinated Augustine for years, and he'd gravitated toward Enoch in his own studies, partly to satisfy his curiosity, and partly to understand why scholars rejected Enoch's theories. Augustine was once a proclaimed Manichaean himself, until 6 years ago. Rome's emperor, Theodosius I, feared the faith would overtake Christianity, so he ordered the killing of all Manichaean monks. To avoid harm to himself and his son, Augustine had publicly converted both of them to Christianity. Augustine leaned in toward the bishop. "So the boy's allegations are confirmed." "Confirmed?" Loffredo sat upright. "You have a lot to learn about politics, Augustine. The populace believes the boy. That's all the confirmation they need." "Is Brother Fides?" Loffredo nodded. "Yes, he's still missing. Likely in hiding, which is exactly why I called for you." Augustine shifted. "I had nothing to do with him." Yes, I know." Loffredo crossed his arms. "However, Brother Fides was once your pupil." "That was over 13 years ago," Augustine urged. 14, actually. "But you knew his friends, and you still have your own Manichaean contacts, yes?" Augustine shook his head sharply. We're Christian, Bishop Loffredo. You baptized me and my son yourself. Yes, yes. Loffredo patted Augustine's knees again. And you've been a devout man of faith. But friendships are the binding ties of men. I recognize we all have friends who may not be as strong in faith in what's in our own hearts. Augustine looked away. Please, the bishop entreated him. I ask of you to use your resources. Bring quick resolution to this issue before it's too late. But how? Find Brother Fides. Return him to the church so we might pray over his soul. Give him an opportunity to confess and dissolve him from the church. Loffredo leaned back and exhaled. I should never have accepted him. Why do you say that? Loffredo tilted his head. Following his studies with you, Brother Fides' first position was in the Archbasilica of St. John Lateran in Rome. He came to us under somewhat mysterious circumstances. A number of his peer deacons had been found dead, killed in their living quarters. Brother Fides confided that he wished to relocate to Milan out of fear for his life. However, when I later learned that a few altar boys had also been killed with no clear explanation, something didn't set right with me. Then it's possible Olmo wasn't his first. Loffredo shook an aged finger at Augustine. It's not our role to judge the hearts of man. As such, although I don't ever regret reaching out my heart to Fides, I see now welcoming him into our family was unwise. Augustine inhaled deeply. I never knew Fides committed such terrible sins. Olmo is the only boy who has come forward, so I believe Brother Fides joined us and kept his soul pure for some time, Loffredo offered. But the devil is persistent. Augustine nodded. So now that we have these issues at hand, you must recognize that the Church cannot afford this blight. If nothing else, we must stop Fides. His suspected sins in both Rome and Milan may soon infect other cities. Augustine stared down at the floor. I understand. Do you, Augustine? I fully realize your relocation to Hippo Regius is not only to reconnect your family. Your potential appointment as bishop there is no secret. And as a bishop, you must learn to make these difficult decisions. He paused, then added, For the sake of the Church, and for the sake of others whom Brother Fides may have wronged, or might wrong in the future. Augustine nodded again. I understand. He swallowed. I'll inform my son that we must delay our trip, and there are some old friends I'll need to get in touch with. Loffredo placed a hand on Augustine's shoulder. God be with you.